Hey, everybody, it's the waitingfornextyear.com podcast. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. I'm here with Andrew. How's it going, Andrew?
It's going pretty good.
So I stopped you in the middle of it because we were already talking before we went live. And you said that you've kind of entered a weird phase of the pandemic where you're actually not even watching much TV anymore.
Yeah. So, I would say, obviously, when it first happened, I was like everybody. I was like, well, what can I binge on Netflix? I was saying I'd get off work and I'd go like by 4:30. I was sitting on the couch, either playing video games or watching TV, and binge through Tiger King just like everybody else. And then I, take a dinner break and then right back to the couch and watch some more TV or play more video games or whatever. And I don't know, I've been finding other things to occupy my time. And I've hit the phase where, I get home from work and, go for a walk. I'll, do some exercise, something like that. Maybe I'll get some more work done on my laptop. Maybe I'll do some reading, catch up on some things. It's generally close to like 7:30, 8 o'clock before I'm even on the couch to even think about watching TV. And then, I'll watch the Indians until I get mad at them and can't stand to watch them anymore. And maybe I'll watch a little something else. But then these days I'm going to bed by I get up at 5 a.m, so I've been going to bed at 10 o'clock sharp. So that's.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't even been watching that much of the Indians lately. They hit the skids at a certain point, and I have enough people around me who watch the Indians that I'm kind of waiting to see if they can turn it around a little bit, and then
you got people to tell you when it's safe to get back in.
Dude, baseball has kind of turned into a highlight sport for me. And, I don't really enjoy sitting down and watching a whole game unfold the way I used to. And it's just very strange.
I think, I think we talked a little bit about this last time, certainly as far as, following the sport in a bigger picture in terms of, knowing all the stars and all of that. But I also feel too, and I don't think we talked about this as much, but we talked a little bit about it in the roundtable. I don't think the game of baseball is as much fun to watch as it used to be either, because it's become such an extreme sport of home runs and strikeouts. It's, for one thing, that's, everybody is being taught now to swing to, get the ball in the air, obviously, which is different from when we were growing up, when you were really just taught to make contact and get the ball in play. And everybody pulls everything, everybody's just trying to hit home runs. They pull everything. And that, as a result, we've seen the shift. Everybody's using the shift on almost every batter, it seems. And so what you're seeing is when guys do hit, these line drives that get past the first line of the infield that normally they would have been base hits. Now they're just long outs,
honestly, I grew up, obviously I was an Indians fan, but I grew up loving Tony Gwynn. And the concept of Tony Gwynn, the way that he played the game. And for those of you who are too young to remember, and there probably are some people out there that are too young, too young to remember Tony Gwynn.
Including guys who write for our site. We got a couple, I'm not sure, saw Tony Gwynn.
But he was an average hitter for average. He was an above average hitter, obviously. But, it was all, he could just kind of spray the ball over the field. He was a professional hitter. He could just stand in there and put the ball in play, and usually where a defender was not. Not a lot of power, not a lot of gap power, not a lot of doubles or whatever, but just a professional all-around hitter for average. And would that dude even get a look today? Or is he being coached to change his launch angle or whatever else as he's coming up? Could the next Tony Gwynn even happen?
I'm trying to think. So I'm trying to look here real quick in his career. I mean, this is a Hall of Fame all-time great hitter. You know, he had for his career 135 home runs, and that's in what is this? Looking 20 seasons. He had 135 home runs. Let's see here. The most he ever hit in a single season was 17. He actually got one on the. He had a 3-year span in which he hit 17, 16, and 10. He was maybe juicing in that era. Let's see. I mean, that's
in 1994.
Late
though,
90s.
he batted
But-
394.
Yeah,
with a
I mean, he was
450
awesome.
a 454 on base percentage.
He was just a contact hitter. He just put the ball in play and got on base. And I think you're right. Like there aren't very many equivalents to Tony Gwynn today in baseball. I'm sure if we had some of our baseball guys on, maybe they could, who follow it nationally, maybe they could come up with some names. But obviously, like the one who torments the Indians would be like a Whit Merrifield is maybe like in that. But I mean, but we're talking. He's not hitting anywhere near the averages that Tony Gwynn hit.
No.
It's a different caliber. Maybe Ichiro is maybe like the last like kind of guy like that, but Ichiro had a little bit more pop than Gwynn, I think. But
and Ichiro had that arm. He had that fielding ability, the defensive ability as well.
Yeah.
It's also hard to believe that Tony Gwynn died in 2014. He's a guy who should still be alive. He should be a hitting coach somewhere. It just doesn't make sense.
Absolutely. And so, yeah. And I think you're right. I just don't think you guys are taught to hit like that. And you don't see guys coming up that are just designed that way. And, and some people like it. We're perhaps approaching that point in life, where we're that guy, like it's just not the same as it was when I was young,
Dude, how did I become the oldest person at Waiting for Next Year?
Like,
how did that happen? I mean, where have you gone, Rick Grayshock? Where have you gone, Todd Derry?
Yeah. I mean, it's just, so I'm not saying like necessarily that baseball is bad for everybody. Obviously, we've got people who write for the site who love it. And, I know when we talked inside our Waiting for Next Year Slack, Mitch was pushing against my assertion that the shift is terrible and that they should get rid of it, So I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying for me that I just don't enjoy the all or nothing aspect of baseball quite as much. And the shift just frustrates me. It really frustrates me.
It does to me too, but it's kind of one of those things like where I'm pro technology in like the wider culture. And it's like, once you know that these things exist, you can't undo it, and you can't undo knowledge. You can't undo learning. It's like, I'm not sure how you legislate 3-pointers out of the NBA, but the amount of running, gunning, and 3-point shooting, I don't know that I really miss post play, but I kind of occasionally miss post play. I think it's a style of game that's going to be lost to the ages. It's going to be antiquated, like the pre dunk era or the pre 3-point era altogether. And I'm not real precious about things like that. I'm not real tied to history or tradition, but the idea still, I mean, it does kind of hurt my soul that Brad Daugherty will never exist again. Even Zydrunas Ilgauskas will never exist again.
I wouldn't say never on the big post guys. I think that there could be a circular effect at some point down the road where like it's when it's completely washed out of the system and along comes a guy who's just so good in the post that he just can't be stopped. And you harken back to like the Wilts and even Kareem was unstoppable.
Even Shaq
in the post, and even Shaq. So I think you'll see that before you'll see the mid-range game come back. Like I think you'll see the post game before you'll see mid-range jumpers back as a thing, and it's so funny when you watch like classic NBA games, like even games when there was a 3-point line. Like, I mean, I'm talking like, mid 90s, late 90s. There's just guys jacking up all these. They would do the dribble to get by their guy, and then they'd pull up for the mid-range jumper. And there were guys who were great at it, but that's just not a thing that happens. Once you get by the guy, you're looking to either get to the hole or you're going to kick it out to somebody to shoot a three.
Well, and to be honest, a guy like Larry Nance today, yeah, he would be shooting beyond the 3-point line. He wouldn't have stopped at perfecting a shot, around the elbows,
because they're being taught that growing up that,
he would have been backing up 6-7 feet, and he would have either perfected that or he would have been just dangerous enough that he could fake that and go straight to the hole, or both.
And that's why it's going to be hard to find people who excel at that post game, because they're not spending their time working on those moves and the footwork that's required. I mean, that's a skill. It's not just being big. That's an absolute skill. A guy like Akeem Olajuwon, like the dream shake, that was an absolute skill. And that takes time and repetition. And I think, they're certainly being taught, well, let's spend some time shooting threes. And that time that you're spent practicing your shooting takes away from the post game. So, I mean, I certainly think you're right that we're not going to see it anytime soon, but maybe at some point down the road, like you'll hit that point where just people have forgotten it, and then when somebody comes along and says, you know what, I'm just going to do this, and nobody will know how to stop it because they don't see it ever anymore. So,
what's really, really sad and kind of a little bit funny is that we started this conversation talking about Tony Gwynn in baseball, and immediately we ended up comparing it to the NBA, and then we had a lot more fun talking about the NBA. Yeah, that's a real problem for baseball.
For sure.
A really big problem for baseball. And the conversation became a lot more relatable to our audience and the audience at large when we started comparing it to the NBA, because even that's something that, like, the NBA is obviously far more popular today than Major League Baseball, if you ask me. I'm sure there are actual metrics that'll prove that as well. But the idea is that the baseball used to be the historical game as well, the one that not only was America's pastime, but people were obsessed with Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, all the historic Yankees and the historic players. And now that is reserved for the NBA. Like, people know Michael Jordan, they know Shaquille O'Neal, they know Larry Bird, they know all these historical figures from the NBA. I wouldn't say they really know the historical figures from the NFL or Major League Baseball, let alone NHL.
Yeah, I mean, well, and I was gonna say certainly not NFL. Like, NFL is so popular, but it's
people don't care about Joe Montana today,
right? Like the stars don't persist. I mean, even Jerry Rice, who I consider one of the two best players of all time. Like, who are the best football players of all time? For me, it's like Jim Brown and Jerry Rice. Like, that's the list.
Well, and the quarterback for us growing up was Joe Montana. Like,
absolutely,
he had the video game. He was the guy. That was the dynasty when we were young.
He had, what was it, four Super Bowls? I think 4.
No idea, but he was the guy. He had Joe Montana on Sega.
Yeah, he was on the Jerry Rice was in the shoot. What was the cartoon with Bo Jackson and Wayne Gretzky? What was that called? Oh my gosh! I kept wanting to say Super Friends, but it's not Super Friends.
I'll look it up.
But I'm trying to remember now. Was Joe Montana or was it Jerry Rice for football? I don't. Oh no, it was Bo Jackson.
Pro Stars.
That was
Michael Jordan, Bo Jackson, and Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah. Man,
that's amazing that happened.
Yeah, it really is. But yeah. So you're right, though. Like, I mean, it was definitely the 49ers were the team, and it was Joe Montana, and and to some degree that's because Tom Brady eclipsed a lot of that in terms of just raw Super Bowl wins, and I mean,
and Peyton Manning threw for 1 trillion yards.
Yeah. Yeah, and and you certainly like the game changed, and then you have all these you have these quarterbacks who if Drew Brees did what he does today back when in Joe Montana's era, I mean, it would have just been ridiculous. Aaron Rodgers, even Phillip Rivers, like these quarterbacks, they all put up numbers that far surpass what Joe Montana was doing, but it's but some of us still remember. I still remember.
Well, and how much of Joe Montana would people remember if he was still active in the media? Like he didn't have the media gene, and so it just never quite worked out.
Yeah, you certainly like Steve Young is certainly more visible today, because he does.
But how many people who watch Steve Young even know he played? Like, I think about that with Barkley too. Like you and I watched Barkley, and
he's my all-time favorite athlete of any sport is Charles Barkley.
People our age and probably 10 years our senior, there are a lot of people that would say Barkley was their favorite.
It's funny too. Like I talk to people who are not that much younger than me. I mean, I'm talking just very close to my age, a year or two younger, and they'll say things like, well, Barkley was just slow and fat, and it's like, you don't remember what Charles Barkley was. Like Charles Barkley, this guy would in his prime was leading fast breaks. Like, I mean, he was the most agile big, I guess he was fat, but I mean, he was like the most agile fat man you'll ever see. It was like if Chris Farley played basketball or something, he's so, I mean, Charles Barkley was such an incredible offensive basketball player and such an incredible rebounder.
When he got bigger and bigger, like when he was with the 76ers, he was still just like solid. And then he got a little bit bigger with the Suns. I don't remember all his stops, but
but he like in his book, he even talks about when he tried out for the Olympic team and he didn't make the Olympics, which is kind of crazy. And this is pre-Dream Team. I'm talking. This is back when it was just like guys coming out of college right before they went to the pros.
Because he was a rookie in '84.
Right. And so he didn't make the Olympics. And I think part of it had to do with they were concerned about his eating, that he was just too fat. And this is if you look at him, then compared to what he, later, you'd say, man, he was much fatter later in his career. But, even just setting aside his size, like when Michael Jordan was Michael Jordan, you know, and he was dominating the league, Charles Barkley was the second best basketball player in the NBA, in my opinion. I think people, you know, people don't remember how great Barkley was. And then, you know, certainly his, you know, MVP season with the Suns when they ultimately played the Bulls, like he was so great that year and that team was so good. But anyways, I guess that's neither a little bit sidetracked, but man, I love Charles Barkley. He was such an incredible basketball player.
Yeah. And
very unique.
And he maybe even better as a broadcaster, but I mean,
which is no surprise. He was always awesome with the media. Like
he was always super entertaining.
Yeah.
So the reason we kicked off that conversation before we get to the Indians and the Browns, which we will, was because I'd watched Project Power on Netflix, which is like a new movie with Jamie Foxx and the dude from Inception, whose name I should know. Anyway, yeah, it's one of these movies that absolutely would have been in the theater 5-10 years ago. It would have done mediocre. Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
Okay.
And Machine Gun Kelly too, by the way, who's
there you go.
Maybe we should get into this later, but my 10-year-old second favorite musical artist, Machine Gun Kelly.
Wow. Okay.
I know, right? Eminem and Machine Gun Kelly.
All right.
But it's one of these movies that's like it would have failed miserably in the theater. People would have trashed it. They would have said that it's not worthy. You shouldn't spend your money on it. And on Rotten Tomatoes, it got like 50% from the critics and 59% from the audience. And on Netflix, that's a home run, man. That it's just depending on the venue, depends on your perception of the quality of the entertainment.
So that was just a straight Netflix one. That wasn't one that was supposed to be in the theaters.
Well, I mean, everything is filmed at this point like it could be in the theaters.
Yeah.
Although
it's such
I
a
don't
weird time to like understand that.
I wonder if it was ever thought of as, uh, um, you know,
Like a theater
for
movie.
for the studios. Yeah,
Mhm.
I don't know.
Now, I like, are theaters open now? I know I saw AMC was about to open. I don't know if that already happened. As I say, if they did, like, what movies are they even showing? Like,
Yeah, I don't know. At this point, all I've heard about are the drive-ins, and I know that the regular theaters are planning their reopening in Ohio, but
Mm.
um, I just don't know.
yeah. Anyway, but yeah, I haven't seen it, so I don't have a lot I can add to that conversation in terms of what the movie was. But
All right, so
but
to answer your question, though, Netflix bought the script back in 2017 in pre-production.
okay.
So they were on board well before they basically funded the whole thing,
Yeah. Okay.
which was new for them because they used to go to for a while they just showed other people's movies. Then they started going to like Cannes and the different film festivals and outbidding the studios for the films that had already been done on an independent budget. And then they started buying them in pre-production and funding the entire production, which is what happened in this case. I think that was also the case with Bird Box.
Okay. That makes sense.
So they're basically a full-blown studio now.
Sure. I mean, they have such a big head start on that, like, medium. They were so far ahead of the game, and it just gave them such a huge advantage. I mean, they make so much money that, yeah, and they can pretty much do whatever they want right now at this point. You certainly, nothing lasts forever. At some point, somebody will figure out how to truly compete with them. But there's been so many things that have really faltered in terms of becoming that true competition to them.
The only companies that can truly compete with them are the ones that have a similar head start in another realm. So you're talking about Amazon and Apple.
But Apple's really did not have enough quality content.
Did you count them out? Have you counted them out? Because all they had to do was get their platform started, and then they've got more resources than anybody in the universe.
I mean, that they do. And no, I'm not counting them out. I'm just saying, like, there's been nothing that's really compelled me, like, man, I have to get on the Apple TV Plus service. I watched the morning show. It was okay. It was just okay.
I enjoyed it. It wasn't great.
Yeah.
I liked it.
And then, like, Amazon's thing, I mean, they certainly have some originals that are doing decent, but
Jack Ryan.
I still don't totally enjoy the whole multi-tiered, like, some things I have to pay for extra to watch, some things are included. And don't get me wrong, I've certainly rented movies from Prime. I mean, in fact, I just rented Almost Famous after our last podcast when we talked. I was like, man, I need to watch that again. So
I'm gonna buy that sucker.
Actually, I think I did buy it actually. So I was like, so I could always have it. But like Netflix, you just subscribe and you can watch anything that's on it, and you don't have to worry about that. And I still find that a more preferable experience. They still have in my opinion, a significantly better interface, at least definitely on Roku. It's way easier to search and navigate than Amazon services. So Amazon and Apple, they have the resources to hang in there. They're in this for the long haul. But I would say they're still pretty far behind Netflix in terms of quality and raw subscribers. They have like Quibi, which was an absolute failure. Disney Plus is interesting. They certainly are right there in terms of quality content. I mean, they have so much good content on Disney Plus. So I think that's one that will probably be in this game for a while too. But
yeah, when you talk about a list of winners, Disney Plus is always going to be in the list of winners because their back catalog. You can have as many things, as many studios as you want, but there will always be a phase of life when you need Disney. And now that they bought Marvel and Star Wars,
that's what I was going to say.
It's just never ending.
Like, I mean, if you're talking about like the two iconic film franchises of the last 30 years, like it's Marvel and Star Wars. Like, I don't know that that anything else competes with those two, and they have both of them. I mean,
and they're not done. Who knows how the consolidation will shake out. The idea that Disney or Disney Plus wouldn't continue to make acquisitions after buying Marvel and buying Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, the sky's the absolute limit.
Absolutely. And, they're still, I mean, they're not done making Marvel movies. They're not done making Star Wars content, so they're just in terms of what they do, their bread and butter, they're going to be making plenty of money with those. There will always be new animated movies that people want to watch, and they've gotten so good at being not just kids movies. I mean, so many adults can watch a lot of these animated movies on Disney and enjoy them. Coco is one of my favorite movies. Like, I adored Coco. It was so good.
Well, and they did Hamilton, and they've got a brand new movie that everybody's talking about with I don't know, maybe like a gorilla or something.
Yeah. What was the one I just saw it just a couple months ago? The one with where they were like their dad was like a wizard or something, and they had gotten them the wand. Oh my gosh, what? This is gonna kill me that I can't remember. It was really good too. Like, I watched it with my nieces and nephews, and I was like, and it was really good, but I can't.
Onward.
Yes, Onward. Yep. I like that one too.
So, and the new one is the one and only Ivan, which I haven't seen. My kids are starting to get old enough where they think they're too cool for stuff, and so you have to like force them to start, and then they really enjoy it. And then after they enjoyed it for 2 hours, they'll probably say, "Oh, it wasn't that good."
Yep.
They're in that critical phase, but all right, so let's talk about sports a little bit. We kind of buried the lead. It's a fun conversation. It's something I'm passionate about because I love talking about all this media stuff all the time. But so, do you want to start with everybody getting hurt with the Browns?
Yeah, we might as well start with the Browns.
Name somebody who's not hurt with the Browns.
Baker Mayfield. Oh, wait, I'm not gonna. Boy, did I ever fix that.
Not only that, they were caught up in the round of fake COVID tests, not fake, misdiagnosed COVID tests or whatever you want to call it.
And Kevin Stefanski was one of the ones who got the initial positive test. So he didn't run that practice on Sunday when they eventually did their practice. Joe Woods took over and handled that practice. So, it's like, as though the Browns aren't already behind. You've got it's like it's really frustrating because it's like we've got this organization in place that I think most of us feel pretty good about. We like that at least everybody's on the same page. They're pulling in the same direction. We like everything we've seen and heard from the coaching staff. The front office hasn't done too much that has been head scratching. Like, it's just, I think people generally feel good. Like, okay, we've got something in place. Well, then this pandemic happens and the Browns lost so much time with that offseason program to let Stefanski get his system in place. And, and so, okay, so that stinks. Well, then they finally get in here and, all right, well, let's go. Let's get started. And then guys just start dropping like flies. J.C. Treader, Myles Garrett, Now obviously Grant Delpit and Greedy Williams, and Jarvis is still dealing with his
and all the other secondary players who we don't know by name yet, but we were hoping to learn their names because they were going to contribute to the team.
Yeah, I mean, and Kevin Johnson, Kevin Johnson's having a nice camp with the Browns, lacerates his liver. Like, are you kidding me? And then, so that all sucks. And then the head coach tests positive for COVID, loses an entire practice only to find out, oh yeah, you didn't really have it. It's just this lab gave everybody in the NFL false positives. Like, I hope at some point you can say maybe we're getting all our bad luck out of the way now, but this has been a just brutal summer and fall, or heading into this fall. It's just been a brutal summer for the Browns.
Well, and I don't want to go completely and totally down the COVID rabbit hole, but I'm seeing it all the time, where the fact that there were all these false positives, including, and then the governor of Ohio had a false positive. Like, these things will happen. And it's proof that it's really a hard thing when you're testing this number of people, when the stakes are this high. And mistakes will happen, but there's all this. And again, I really don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but there's a lot of talk that this proves some vast conspiracy to overstate the impact of COVID on the world. And, that leaks into the Big Ten canceling their football season and all these different things. And it's very hard. It's very hard. I've talked a lot about this in my personal life and with you guys behind the scenes, is like ever since this COVID thing hit, I'm used to being, I try and think really hard about the things that I want to do. And I try and be very decisive when I make a decision. I don't feel good about any decision I make over the last 6 months. I have got a lot of indecisiveness. I feel like I don't know anything. And I normally think that's one of my superpowers, is knowing what I don't know. But like, it feels like it just, and this all plays into it. The idea that you could have 77 or however many false positive tests throughout the NFL, like, it just doesn't help. So I'm with you that it sucks. I just don't think it's a vast conspiracy.
Right. No, I mean, I definitely would agree with that part. And I mean, certainly, the thing about this pandemic that's been crazy is, well, not the thing. I mean, there's a million things that
just
have been crazy about this. One of the things is certainly, like, it's this thing that you can't escape, right? Like, every conversation, I don't think we could get through a podcast without talking about it. You talk with coworkers about it. The rare occasion in which you talk to a stranger, what are you going to talk about? You're going to talk about COVID. Like, you turn on the news, they're talking about COVID. You turn on sports talk, they're talking about COVID. It's just been this thing it's all around us. It's always on the back of our mind. But the thing that sucks about it is we don't know anything about it. Like, and no matter how much you try to learn about it, I listen to podcasts about it. I read articles about it. Like, I'm like you, like, I try to be informed. I try to stay on top of it. Like, I want to know what I can know, and I want to know what I can't know. But with COVID, it's like every time I take 2 steps forward and thinking I understand the data and things like that, like, something happens that you realize, like, oh my gosh, like, this data I was looking at is unreliable, and this part is unreliable. And that doesn't mean any of it's a conspiracy. It just means, like, this is really hard. It turns out when there's a new virus and it spreads across the entire world, it turns out it can be, like, really complicated. And we're certainly finding that out the hard way.
Even in a scenario where you've got a league with almost unlimited resources trying to take control of the situation, you can only control so much.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say then. It's like, and so then obviously as it pertains to football, and that leads, football is, like we were saying, it's by far the most popular sport overall. And now all of a sudden it's having like this real impact on this thing that is just a part of our cultural identity as Americans. And it was just a brutal slap in the face to see, this affect not just the Browns, but affect, multiple teams across the league. It was just a very, very, very tough day for the NFL and for football in general, because like you said, it leads people to make assumptions about the Big Ten and what's going on with that, and it's all just very frustrating. It just doesn't help matters at all. Like certainly it doesn't help the Browns, but it doesn't help us as fans or as citizens trying to just get by when we're constantly having things like the false positives. It's very, very frustrating.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to have sports back. I really am. But even it just goes to show in this time with this issue, there is no escape. The closest thing you get to an escape is a movie, because it will happen in a pre or post, it just happens in a pre-pandemic world or a world where the pandemic doesn't exist at all. But like even sports, as much as I'm so happy to have it back, I was happy to have UFC. I'm happy to have baseball. I'm happy to have the prospect of football, but it just the idea that you can ever escape it, that there is no distraction big enough.
Well, no, because even like the empty stands are a constant reminder that we're still living in a pandemic, so you can have the escape of the game on the field, but I can't watch a baseball game or a basketball game and not notice the lack of crowds, right? Like even the piped in noise doesn't really help.
Have you been enjoying the NBA playoffs?
No, not at all.
Me neither.
But that's sort of another. I think there's just deeper reasons, and we talked about this, maybe 2 podcasts ago. It's just. Oh, there we go.
We should be watching the convention.
But certainly, my feelings about basketball has a lot to do with the Cavs not being invited into the bubble at all. Like that just really hit me hard, and I've just had a hard time getting back into it. But it's also like, it's just weird. It's so weird watching basketball without fans. It just is. Like there's always this aspect of momentum to basketball and the home crowd. Like, you just feel that sense of the crowd, and it can be propelling and it can be deflating. I certainly remember even thinking back to like Game 7 of the 2016 finals. Like, the Warriors were the home team, but when we hit that stretch in the fourth quarter where neither team could score, you could feel the tension from the crowd reverberating back and forth to the teams on the court. There was that feedback loop. Like there was a real tension on this as these teams went 4 or 5 minutes without either teams being able to score. And like, you just felt that, and there were also times, where the Warriors crowd certainly, like when they would go on those runs and the crowd would get going, it just felt crushing. You just felt like, how are you going to get out of this? And I think back to, for the Cavs, I think of like Game 6. There was no way the Cavs were going to lose that game. Like with that crowd, with that energy from that crowd, you just felt that momentum shift. And it's just been really surreal to watch basketball and not have that feedback with the fans. I don't enjoy it as much. And like I said, it is a constant reminder that, yep, we're playing basketball, and that's awesome. And like you said, I'm with you. I'm glad it's there. I'm glad we have it. It's just not a total distraction. Even in the distractions, there are reminders of what our reality is.
Yeah, and like you and I have talked about, without the Cavaliers, it just doesn't mean much to us. And
Right.
Not that they earned a playoff spot. I get it, but
Yeah.
I want to watch the jersey with Cleveland on the front.
Yeah,
it's just my.
We don't need to go totally into it again, but it was just, it was just this feeling that like it just made the Cavs feel like a second-rate franchise. Like they just don't matter to the grand scope of the NBA. And I know that's not why they did it. I understand that. I get why they did what they did. So don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it was just very deflating as a fan, and it just feels like we're fans of a franchise that doesn't matter. And it didn't help that then the Cavs go and fall 3 spots in the lottery. It was just like, are you kidding me? Like, come on. Like, I don't know.
Oh yeah, the lottery happened since we last talked.
Yeah.
I kind of forgot.
It's so frustrating. Like, I'm in hockey. I've talked, I'm a Red Wings fan, and the Red Wings had just a historically awful season. They were so far and away the worst team in the NHL. And the NHL did this thing where in their draft lottery, they put a placeholder in for the teams who lost the play-in series to get into the playoffs in their restart. And that won the lottery. So all of a sudden, these teams who were fighting to get into the playoffs all then went into a second lottery together, and the New York Rangers get the first pick. And and I think the Red Wings fell to, I believe they fell to third in that one. And it's like, and then the Cavs, they fall to 5. And again, the Cavs were not tanking. The Cavs, this whole idea that we have to.
They traded for Drummond, for God's sake.
Right. The Cavs were not tanking. The Cavs are just a bad team in the middle of trying to rebuild. And the draft is the lifeblood of a rebuild, and it sucks to get punished, to get penalized for it. And all of a sudden you're drafting 5, and this is not a 5-player deep draft. Now that doesn't mean the Cavs can't draft a good player, but it's going to be a little bit of a crapshoot. Like the Cavs are going to have to get a little bit lucky with that number 5 pick. Lucky or good, I suppose you could say. Like, well, if you
were the Bucks good, or were they lucky?
Right, they were lucky. They absolutely were. They were lucky, and that's nothing wrong with that. You got to have luck sometimes. But I'm just saying, like in the NBA draft, you're generally not looking past the first 2 or 3 picks in terms of feeling really good about what it is you're getting. It becomes a bunch of question marks very fast in the NBA, and some of those guys, live up to it. A lot of them don't. And don't even get me wrong, like a lot of them tend to become 10-year players. Like they're role players, and that's fine. But just traditionally, like if you're trying to rebuild a franchise and you get the number 5 pick, you need better than a guy that's going to be a role player. You need better than, what Colin Sexton has been or what Darius Garland has been. Like you need those guys to be better. And it's just frustrating to once again have to pick number 5 when
isn't Darius Garland's not even 20 yet, but I mean,
I'm not writing either of those guys off. Like
no, totally, but the idea is you would already know if Darius Garland was going to be Giannis.
Right. I mean, you look at a guy like Donovan Mitchell. Like Donovan Mitchell made an impact his rookie season, and that's why if there's anybody that I'm excited about on the Cavs, it's Kevin Porter. Like Kevin Porter showed some things as a rookie that he can play, and I think there's some reason to be excited to see what he can do. Now, is he going to be a superstar? I don't know about that necessarily, but I think he can be certainly a very, very, very good basketball player. And I'm excited, to see, where he can grow from there. So and I'm not totally down on all aspects of Colin Sexton. Colin Sexton has been improving, and I really like his attitude, and I'm pulling for the guy big time. I love Colin Sexton. I'm just saying, in terms of like you just want, when you're trying to rebuild and you need these like cornerstones of your franchise, like you need guys who are dogs right from the beginning, right? Like you just need that alpha dog right from the beginning, and the Cavs haven't found that yet, and it's going to be hard to find it with that number 5 pick.
No, absolutely. And the idea was that the NBA was trying to solve tanking. The Cavs absolutely weren't tanking, and it feels like they got punished anyway.
Yeah.
I know that around the league, there's no sympathy for the Cavaliers because of the number of number one picks they've gotten from LeBron.
They've benefited from it. Yeah.
But the frustrating thing in the NBA is that with the way free agency goes and the way that the league is going, there is no model, there is no path. There is no model, there is no path. Even in one era past, you could always say, well, you could be the Spurs. But there is no Spurs model. There's no Bucks model. There's no model right now. Because
for a while everybody was saying the Thunder. Like it was always like, oh, you should do the Thunder model. And
but there is no model.
Right. And the Thunder didn't even win a championship, So again, they certainly nailed a 3 or 4 year span of drafts. I mean, perhaps some of the best drafting you'll ever see. And they deserve a lot of credit for that. And they built a really good franchise, and they had a lot of deep playoff runs. They made it to the finals once. I'm not taking anything away from what they did. I'm just saying, like, for everybody for a while was like, man, you got to have that model. Well, first of all, nobody was able to replicate that model. Nobody's been able to string together drafts like the Thunder did. And to your point, today that doesn't even exist as a model. Like, there is no model today. The model today is hope you live in a big market and a bunch of superstars want to team up and play for your team. That's the model. And it was very frustrating to some degree, like Kawhi Leonard winning a title with the Raptors that's not good enough to keep Kawhi Leonard. Like, Kawhi Leonard still had to go to Los Angeles and bring along Paul George, and that's fine. Like, I'm not an anti-player empowerment. Like, I'm not about that. I'm just saying I'm a fan, and I'm a fan of a team in a city that is probably never going to attract.
I'm anti-player empowerment. As long as their contracts are amazing and incredible, they should have to give up all the flexibility in the world of which market they work in, and there should be a scarcity of these giant contracts, and they should be spread around the league. And sorry, there shouldn't be buddy ball in the NBA. And I know it benefited the Cavaliers when they traded for Kevin Love, and they did it too. But I mean, I honestly, it might as well be a pickup league. They might as well pick teams at the beginning of every year, with Kawhi Leonard winning a championship and leaving, with Kevin Durant joining the Warriors the way he did. And you can talk about how it's one in a lifetime, but there's going to be it was only one in a lifetime because he was the first. And we're going to continue to see these one-off scenarios where people group up in a city where there's cap space. And I don't know.
It's been frustrating to watch it happen to the Bucks, what
did the New Jersey Nets do to deserve all the free agents that they got this offseason? Like, what wonderful organization and team had they built?
They made sure they were better than the Knicks. Congratulations.
And congrats to the Clippers for under Ballmer, kind of turning around their bad luck reputation and everything. But
guys always really be in LA.
But they didn't really do anything either. Yeah.
They just made sure they didn't have a horrible racist as their owner anymore, so like, it's like, congratulations. And yeah,
but again, there's no model. There's always say what you want about baseball. There always seems to be a model in baseball. Say what you want about football. There always seems to be a model.
Absolutely. And in basketball, it's very frustrating. You look at the Detroit Pistons. What are the Pistons doing to get back? Like, they won a championship, with the Rip Hamilton. Obviously, the Bad Boys did, but I'm talking like recently or fairly recently. The Rip Hamilton and Rasheed Wallace Pistons, they won a title. And what are they doing to rebuild? Like, what can they do? What's their model? What is you know, if Giannis leaves the Bucks, what's going to be their model? It's very, very, very hard. You know, I would say if anything looks like a model to some degree, maybe it is Toronto. You know, that even then, like, that model is, you know, have a really, really good head coach and players that totally buy into that system, and that's such a rare thing. You know, not many teams are going to lose a player like Kawhi Leonard and then still come back and still be almost just as good the next year. Like, that's a rare thing, and that's special, and that's awesome for them, and I'm happy for them. But it's very, like, it's hard to, like, if you're the Cavs, what are you doing to be like the Raptors? You know, that's tough.
Well, we're coming up. We're over 50 minutes. We're heading towards an hour. So let's finish this podcast by really talking about the other wonderful podcasts that are part of the Waiting for Next Year podcast network. We've got The Nail, Tom Valentino. He had the name escapes me. He had somebody on from the News Herald to talk about high school football in Ohio. I listened to it this morning. It was really good. We've got, of course, on this feed itself, if you're listening to the audio version, the Dairy Brothers Tribecast, which you couldn't possibly miss.
Love it. I've listened to every episode. Legitimately, I've listened to every single episode they've ever done.
Me too.
It's awesome.
How much are you looking forward to the Browns Friday fumble?
Always. I love the Friday fumble. I mean, no, it's terrible.
Exactly.
It's coming back. You can't give Dave credit. Like, we don't want Dave getting an ego, but
he's got a big enough head,
right?
like literally, phically, it's a giant. Yeah. He's a giant man. But no, and then Andy and Jared, Cleveland and Beyond. Those guys have been awesome. Just, you know, they are straightforward, straight ahead sports talk. And I still, when Andy loses it and starts screaming at the top of his lungs, that's my favorite thing. And you can't force it. It's got to happen organically. If you started doing it like Sam Kinison, I would hate it. But like when it happens organically, I love it. So make sure
it always has that build. You always feel that build, like, oh, here it comes.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to go find that feed. Andy and Jared, Jarid, Cleveland and Beyond. You can find that feed. The Nail in the Coffin. You can go find that feed, and everything else that we talked about is on the Waiting for Next Year podcast feed. So you've probably already listened to it. But man, this is fun. It's always fun to catch up, man.
Yeah, definitely.
So thanks for watching. Those of you who are on live, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll talk to you next time. It's been the waitingfornextyear.com podcast.